Welcome back to Dreams of the Nameless, where the head of the most vile corporation must demand basic moral legislation from our Congress in this dystopian moment. So, the CEO of Walmart is demanding that Congress raise the minimum wage. And I wanted to follow up on yesterday's story that we did a longer form discussion of the general topic of minimum wage yesterday. And then I discovered that this guy, Doug Mcmillon, the CEO of Walmart, had made this demand, and I thought we can't pass up an opportunity to talk about this. Because number one, I can see the centrists coming out of the woodwork, the corporatists, and making the claim that this is why capitalism's so great. Look at what Walmart's doing. The corporations are the moral ones. All the power should be vested in them. Decrease regulation, and more things like this will happen. And so I want to head that off at the pass. But also, I think this is an indication of how desperate the current moment is. So the current minimum wage is $7.25, which is abysmally low. And most places, where I live at least, most places are paying more than that. For just about any job. Most places you're making $9, $8.50, I think. If I'm wrong, let me know. But Walmart has like 1.5 million employees. And so their CEO coming out and saying this is important because they're significant enough that they drive the culture of the way we view wages and labor. And anytime they say anything like this, it's super high profile. And in the past, I believe when similar things have happened, it's led to relative quick sort of changes. And so I'm going to read this one quote from the article. So previously, this is from Fortune. Previously, Mcmillon expressed support for increasing the national minimum wage. But this is the first time in more than a decade a Walmart CEO has specifically demanded new legislation on the matter. In considering a change, Mcmillon said that federal lawmakers should take into account cost of living increases to avoid unintended consequences. And that's a really ominous tagline there at the end that I think bears a little bit of thought. Because it's veiled in corporate speak, but is he effectively saying they're like, hey, we have to do something, or like the bottom of this shit's gonna fall out?
Yeah, I was.
I mean, that's effectively what he's saying, because corporations don't act out of humanitarianism or egalitarianism, and that sounds to me like code language for we should raise the minimum wage and sort of like give them a cookie, because if we don't, it's going to get really nasty.
Or maybe
so says the dark men in darker suits who give me information after I get my unicorn blood infusion.
No, I was just sitting here thinking about it. I mean, maybe it's worse than that, because what if what's happening is that there's all these other external pressures that are causing them to ever increase their prices just a little bit at a time. And it's been happening for years. I mean, we've all seen it. Everybody's been in Walmart and knows that, a box of macaroni has gone up 50 cents in the last 5 years or whatever it is. I don't know if that's actually factually true. I'm just pulling numbers out of my hat. But we know the prices are going up at Walmart, but their wages aren't. I think it could just be as like dark as like they're to the point now where the average minimum wage worker can't afford to shop at Walmart.
And no, they're totally at that juncture. But I have more to say on this before you go on, because they're talking about raising the Walmart minimum wage in their stores to 11, and that sounds great, but Target has already committed to going to 15 by 2020, and Costco is already doing it, and so. I want to look at this issue a little bit more closely, because if we do, I think we find that you can say that effectively other companies are already way ahead of Walmart, Amazon, for example, is they're already at a 15 minimum. And then, as I said, Target has already committed. And look at Walmart's history. Look at how many times they've been in the news for slamming union stuff or refusing people breaks. Or my whole life, there's been all these news articles and legit cases where Walmart is just the poster child for straight evil corporate horrors.
And I can say I worked there twice.
And both times it was horrific.
Yeah, and I remember like a distinctly like significant chunk of the training is it would say things like, oh, you must ensure that you're doing this because otherwise it's a liability, which in retrospect means somebody didn't do this thing and then Walmart got sued. And a lot of times it was stuff like, oh, we didn't used to let workers take breaks, but now we have to because we like our workers.
Well, and like, my conclusion is that basically what Walmart wants is to come out and say, we're going to raise ours to 11. You should raise the federal minimum wage. A common sense raise. And so they've probably already decided we can afford 11 and it won't cut that big of a chunk out of our delicious, delicious, gigantic profits that we can then divvy up amongst the CEO and shareholders and whatever. And so they're pitching that, hoping that what that'll do is forestall, because people it breeds goodwill. Oh, they're moving in the right direction. I mean, they're a giant company. Maybe they just can't afford to go to 15 right now, but they're moving in the right direction. So I can be convinced to wait another few years to really push the minimum wage above that. They're hoping, I think, that federally it's going to only go to 11. And then historically that means what? It's going to be locked in for 10 more years? And we already talked about this in another video. I don't even think 15 an hour at 40 hours a week with taxes the way they are and the cost of childcare and rent where they are, I don't think 15 an hour is going to be livable, especially for single parents with more than one child, which is a large demographic. And so, yeah, it's a slimy move, and fuck that.